If you don't already have a side hustle, start one now. As a developer, you have an advantage that you have a skill that is still that is seen as in demand and by outsiders as difficult and strange and arcane and borderline magic.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Drew, and welcome to the Kodeco Podcast. In this podcast, we'll keep you up to date with the latest app development tech talk. Now, here's the show.
This is the Kodeco Podcast. Welcome to episode 11 of season 2. Now, this episode was recorded on Wednesday, May 29th, 2024. The episode is sponsored by Monday Dev from Monday.com. I'm your host, Drew Freeman, with my absolutely brilliant co-host, Jennifer Bailey.
Thanks, Drew. Today on the show, we're joined by Joey deVilla. Joey is a longtime developer and developer advocate and a 5-time layoff survivor. He's wrapping up a short contract with Unified.to, teaching AI and Python development on the side and looking for his next gig. He writes on Kodeco's Android team, occasionally makes a video tutorial, and co-wrote the 8th edition of iOS Apprentice. Wow.
Joey, yeah, 5 times. Joey, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Drew. And hey, Jen.
Hopefully there will not be any layoffs while we're recording this. You never know.
You never know. These are crazy times.
Yeah, I've had the experience where somebody walks in the room and says, I need to talk to these people, and you get that shiver up your spine.
I was once, while laid off, talking to somebody who had called me just to express his condolences and check up on me, and then he said, "Oh, wait, hold it. They've called a meeting. I've got to go. I'll call you later." He hung up, and about a half hour later, he called me and said, "I just got laid off." This was in 2008, during the financial crisis at that time.
Oh, no.
Obviously today's this episode is about surviving layoffs and finding a strategic approach to doing so. But so I just want to start with this. Is the story of you and your friend being half an hour laid off, is that your strangest layoff story?
I would have to say yes, just because of the sheer coincidence and timing of it all. It felt like a scene from a movie and not from real life.
See, I have dental phobia. I hate going to the dentist. Mm-hmm. And I was going in for some dental repairs. I had cleared it with my manager. And while I was getting a deep cleaning done, I get a phone call from my manager saying, "You need to come back to the office." And I'm like, "Well, I'm in the dental chair. We sort of talked about this." He says, "I know, but you need to be here. Whatever's going on, I think we're both in the same boat." Oh. So I have been laid off in the dental chair.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
That did not help my dental phobia.
Yeah, now you have this association.
But yeah, 2008 was brutal to everybody. There were just mass layoffs, if not in 2008, when the fallout occurred in 2009. Mm-hmm. I managed to get laid off twice in 2009 just because I was working for a major company that had to recover in January. I got a job at a smaller company in Missouri, and they weren't being able to get any kind of funds, so they laid off as well. I think I was the last one that they laid off before the company micro-sized.
Oh, wow.
So it's exciting.
Strange times indeed.
Oh, and I counted in my head, it is 5. I do tie you.
Okay, there we go.
Oh my goodness. Again, so we have a layoff tie.
There we go.
You have to be in the industry at least a while to do that. That's not standard for somebody under the age of 30, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, you have to have lived long enough to experience 2 or 3 of these once in a lifetime events, which is part of the challenge these days. We are getting too many once in a lifetime events in our lifetimes.
Oh yeah, well, with 2020 and everything else, it's been quite a ride
Yeah.
for the Gen X and the people alive during these times.
Hmm.
So obviously, the question we have to answer is, with all of the layoffs that have occurred in this year or 2023, is there still enough meat on the bone for people to be moving into development?
I would say yes. And the reason for that is this is the exact question that people were asking around the time of the dot-com crash, which is actually the era of my first layoff. And people were asking the exact same thing. And they were just going, we've kind of hit the limit of what we can do with technology. We have web pages, we have Palm Pilots, and we still have CD-ROMs. What more could we possibly need? And of course, we were surprised. New things came out. I mean, in that era, we were still pretty sure that Apple was going to had a 50-50 chance at that point of going under sometime in the next 5 years. And
Right.
it was only shortly after that the iPod came out. And if you had told anybody from that era that Apple would make the category defining phone, you would have been dismissed as crazy.
Yeah. Though admittedly, I invested at $12 a share before many of the splits.
Well, there you go. Yeah, exactly. That was mostly a long shot bet at the time for that's what every financial advisor and stock advisor would have told you back then. But of course, it's it's a very different world now. So,
Even when jobs returned, it was still a long shot bet.
oh yeah, no, they because they borrowed some what seems like a paltry sum from Microsoft to help float the company. And when we talk about today's business deals, that sum seems paltry. I think it was 100 million, and that's tiny compared to the deals that people talk about today. So that is one reason why I say that yes, it's still it's still fine to go into tech. And the other thing, of course, is that a lot tech gets a lot of attention when it comes to layoffs, but there are a lot of people in the retail sector. Actually, I believe far more people in the retail sector have been left off. It's just that it doesn't look like a news story to a lot of people. So there are layoffs going all around. There's plenty of misery to go around. Misery loves company, especially during I guess this is a recession, whatever we're calling the current economic situation is. Misery loves company in it.
So let me ask you this: have you been on both sides of the um, layoff equation? Have you actually been a decider in that process?
No, I never have been. I'm actually quite thankful because I would hate I would hate to have to do that.
Yeah, it would terrify me because I feel like I would be chipping away at my soul.
And that's the thing. Now, there may come a time when I have to be in that position, but it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened to me yet.
I was going to ask Joey, you wrote a great piece for Kodeco in March called Layoff to Liftoff,
Hmm.
surviving downsizing in the tech industry. What inspired you to write that piece? And could you share with us your own layoff story?
Sure. Well, actually, strangely enough, what inspired me to write that piece was the piece I wrote the prior time I got laid off. And in fact, every time, actually, no, only 4 out of 5 times when I have been laid off have I written an article because it always turns into something. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. And it's because I learned a long time ago, and there are other people who say the same thing, is that the key and path to success is simply 4 words: do things, tell people. And every time I've written a layoff article, an article about explaining how I got laid off and providing advice about it, it has started conversations that have ended up helping me land my next job. This time around, what I just decided to do was, because layoffs were in the news, was I decided to go big and write a continuing series. I think previously I may have written 4 or 5 articles, whereas this time on my own personal blog, I wrote 20. And by the time I'd written about number 10 or 11, Sandra from Kodeco got in touch with me and said, "You have to write an article for us." And I'm just going, well, you know what? Kodeco's got way more reach than I do. I will gladly do that and add extra stuff that I thought about afterwards, or that I'd been meaning to write anyways. Let's just make a magnum opus, a layoff article. At the very least, it'll help. At the very least, it'll help some people out there and make and hopefully give them a little bit of hope. And just go, at the very least, they can go, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but here's one person's path through it. Here's a possible roadmap. Here are some suggestions. Maybe this will help. And that's one of the things about layoffs, especially now. There's a lot of fear and insecurity, and it's just nice to have. It's nice to have things like this article that just at least point a potential path out. It may not be a solution that works for everybody, but at least, there's hope. And that's a very important thing.
Yeah, it's important to keep your head in that mindset of it's not over.
Yes.
As Joey and I have already commented that there's 10 layoffs between us. So let's talk about that experience. Give us, from your point of view, one of your layoffs, what goes through your mind, how it happened, etc.
Okay. Why don't I relate the latest one? And that happened February 1st. Now, the first thing was, I did have an indication that people where I was working were going to be laid off. And that's because, and it's not because I had inside information from an exec at the head office. It's a company of about 6,000 headquartered in San Francisco. I got my advance warning from an app called Blind. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Okay, Blind. And you can, I believe the website version is at teamblind.com. And Blind is an app that's available on iOS and Android. And it is an anonymous chat for people who work at tech companies. And the only way there are only 2 ways, as far as I know, to be able to sign up for the app. One is you have to use your work email from a company of at least 30 people or more, or at least a company that the application itself recognizes in its database of reasonably sized companies, or you have to get an invitation code. And Blind is kind of like that super caffeinated lemonade at that national sandwich shop chain. I'm not going to mention their name. It's like that super caffeinated lemonade in the way that in small doses, it will keep you alert, and in large doses, it is toxic. Blind, a lot of the commentary in Blind is rather bitter and snarky and very obsessed with total compensation. In fact, a lot of people at the end of their posts like to write TC followed by the total amount of money that they make per annum working wherever they work. And it's it is yeah, you know what, it is a striving nightmare, but it is if you look at it every now and again, you can get inside information about a company that you won't find anywhere else without a mole or a spy somewhere in the organization. So it is useful for that. So that's how I knew the layoff was coming. But the way we all got laid off was we got an email at about, 8 o'clock in the morning. on our company email saying, if you get another email from us 15 minutes from now, it means you've been laid off. And those were the worst 15 minutes, I would have to say, of 2024 for me. I know a couple of my coworkers kept refreshing their email client. Myself, I was going, nope, I'm stepping away from all electronic devices. I'm going to make myself a coffee. I'm going to sit, I'm going to enjoy that coffee. And when 15 minutes passes, I'm going to check my email again and find out what happened. And I did just that. And that's when I got the second email message that says, we regret to inform you that we have to lay you off. And the usual prepared missive.
HR, the usual HR form letter.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a standard to that. We've done, there's enough there's enough layoff history in the corporate world that they sort of standardized what that text looks like. I have to admit that my company did a very nice job of also saying, we understand that this is difficult. If you need it, we have arranged for counseling. Here's the link. Here's the link. Here are the details. That sort of thing.
Yes. Here's your counseling. Cobra is unaffordable.
Yeah, that's the other thing, actually, is that because of what's called the Warren Act, and that is a law that says that if your company is 100 people or over, you have to provide 60 days notice of an impending layoff. They basically said, you will technically be employed for another 2 months. You don't have to do any work. You're going to get paid. And after that, they were also covering 3 months of COBRA. So I'm covered till the end of July, and then I have to start shelling out a lot of money for my nice Silicon Valley insurance package.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I got laid off from Microsoft, they gave me 4 months where I was employed and receiving paychecks and benefits, but was not in contact with my team.
Okay.
My employment job was to find another job.
Yes.
Which I was able to find while in the middle of that 4 months. I managed to get moving expenses because it was halfway across the country. Was only unemployed officially for a week.
Okay. And yes, as a layoffee, that becomes your new job, is landing the next job.
Yeah. Of course, not everybody's in a very large company, and there is the terror of finance. Let's talk about what kind of a slush fund should you really have in the event of a layoff?
Completely depends on your situation. Now, I have to admit that I am in a fairly good situation. We're at the point right now where we are homeowners. And I like to joke, at the time of the layoff, I would say we were 3 MacBooks away from paying off the house. Now we're 2 MacBooks away from paying off the house. I like I think we should express
doing it.
I think we should express money in terms of iPhones or MacBooks or Vision Pros. So
MacBook and Vision Pro isn't that far apart.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever device you prefer. But as far as a slush fund goes, I mean, the standard advice these days is usually from 6 months to a year, because at least anecdotally, as far as I've heard, when people are laid off, it takes I've heard it takes about 6 months to land a new job. And in fact, let's see now, from my last, the last time I lost a job, it took about 6 months to get hired at a new place. And the time before, a couple of layoffs ago, same deal. It was about 6 months. So 6 months to a year, if you can afford it. And you really should try and see you should try and keep it as liquid as possible. In other words, not locked away in a stock or some other investment vehicle that you can't rapidly turn into cash. I would say, look, there are some high interest savings accounts that are paying 5%. It would, at the very least, 6 months to a year's worth of money would at least pick up some nice interest along the way if you never have to use it.
Even though I will admit, I know most developers, it used to be you live paycheck to paycheck. Now a lot of developers live direct deposit to direct deposit.
Yeah, and the problem with that, of course, is that life loves to throw curveballs.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to be ready for that. And, that goes doubly so if you are self-employed or you are a consultant and you live and die by client business.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything you can do? What if you weren't responsible enough or didn't have enough to make a slush fund? What can you do if you're in that situation?
Well, I mean, at that point, what you're trying to do is, staunch the bleeding as much as possible. So I mean, you're cutting expenses as far as you can. I would say that's one of the first things. If possible, talk to, if you have a mortgage, especially if you're laid off in this current business situation, you might be able to apply for mortgage forbearance. Now, that doesn't mean you get a ticket out of paying your mortgage. You're basically just asking for some kind of time extension, and that's going to really depend on whoever's providing your mortgage. The same deal if you are a renter, and I know a lot of people are renters. Now is a good time. Now is a good time to have that chat with your landlord, and also make a note that in the future, try and cultivate a good relationship with your landlord, because that a lot of this is about personal relationships. After that, I would say, if you don't already have a side hustle, start one now. As a developer, you have an advantage that you have a skill that is seen as in demand and seen by outsiders as difficult and strange and arcane and borderline magic. There are people who are looking for either short-term application of that skill or to be taught that skill. I am very fortunate that I'm friends with the fine folks at Computer Coach over here in Tampa. They're a tech school, and whenever they want somebody to teach Python or AI, I'm their go-to person. So I can always hit them up for opportunities.
And there's so many sites now like Fiverr and TaskRabbit where you basically can say, I'm available for contract jobs.
Yes. But the important thing, and the other good thing about finding work as quickly, even short-term work like that, as quickly as possible, is that during the interview process, as you are looking for new work, you have brand new work, you have recent work product that you can point to and go, I have, in the meantime, I have been doing this, which is a better story than I've just been looking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always, do you have any apps in the App Store yourself or the Play Store?
I have.
We'll be back with more of our interview with Joey right after these words from Monday Dev.
If you're on an R&D or product development team, you know how challenging and frustrating it can be getting products and features out the gate on time, especially if you're working with different teams. If this is often your struggle, you'll love this. Monday Dev, a product of Monday.com, is a straightforward and easy-to-use solution to plan, execute, release, and monitor your entire development lifecycle. Monday Dev is built to give product managers, software developers, and R&D teams the power to take products and features from ideation to delivery as fast as possible, all in one place. The best part? Monday Dev isn't like other platforms that leave non-dev savvy people outcasted or frustrated. It's an intuitive platform that integrates with all the tools you already use, like GitHub, GitLab, Jira, Slack, you name it. So no matter which department you need to team up with, anyone can quickly connect it to their existing work. Because at the end of the day, teams should use a platform that doesn't make them want to pull their hair out every time they need to use it. And Monday Dev's the answer. Go to monday.com/Kodeco, try it yourself for free.
And one more thank you to Monday.com, creators of Monday Dev, for sponsoring this episode of the Kodeco Podcast. And now back to the show.
I have, I still have a couple of apps in the Play Store. I think, in fact, there's one app that I wrote as part of a job search just to prove that I could write stuff in Xamarin, and it is, let's see now. Oh, why am I blanking out on its name? It is, the Brian Eno card app, something Oblique Strategies. That's it. So there's an app called Joey's Oblique Strategies. It is now the only free Oblique Strategies app in the store. Everybody else charges. I really need to update it. But I wrote it in Xamarin in 2 hours and put it in the store just to prove to a recruiter that I could build apps in Xamarin. And that's and that's me harnessing my skills from an earlier life when I was a developer advocate at Microsoft during the Windows Phone era. I was one of the people who tried really hard to make Windows Phone happen. It didn't, but it was a valiant effort and had a lot of fun along the way.
When were you at Microsoft?
I was at Microsoft from 2008 to 2011.
I just missed you.
So it was deep in the, yes, it was in the era of Windows 7 and Windows Phone 7.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that era. I had a student who just loved his Windows Phone, and he was crossing his fingers that they would take off.
Yeah, and and I used to do demos like 0 to Fart app in 60 seconds.
Isn't that the first app to hit the market on every platform?
Oh yes, no, that is the sign that you have arrived in mobile.
So one of the comments you talk about is grieving the layoff.
Yes.
It's almost like experiencing the Kubler-Ross of death.
Yeah.
How do you go through that?
Okay. And for those of you who don't know what the Kubler-Ross grief model is, that's the denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance. I think I'm missing one.
There's a fifth one in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Anger, denial, bargaining.
But you end at acceptance. Yeah. But the first one, of course, is denial. And the other thing is that nobody goes through. Sometimes you can skip one, or sometimes you go through them really quickly, or you end up stuck in one for a while. But yeah, part of the thing is that, of course, a job these days is a means of survival, and for a lot of people, especially in recent times, simply because we also did spend a couple, depending on how careful you were, 6 months to a year and a half, relatively isolated. A job has become part of your identity, and then when that's pulled away from you, that's a good chunk. That's a good chunk of your identity as well, and it just hurts. But I also think that, in an era of some economic uncertainty, there's also a fair bit of fear. I suppose it's like, losing a job kind of feels like you're leaning over on a balcony and then suddenly you realize you've leaned over a little too far and you have that falling sensation. It does feel like that. So you do end up going through a grieving process. And, how you face it really depends on, really depends on how you react to these sorts of things. And the other thing I think is that, this being my 5th layoff, I'm kind of used to it now. I don't know if you've ever seen the meme of cowboys in the gallows, and one guy's looking scared, and another cowboy's just kind of looking at him with a smirk, going, "First time." That's and well, yeah, I feel like that smirking cowboy now. I'm just going, yeah, it still feels rough, but I have been through this now, so I know it's survivable, and in fact, I know it's possible to come out the other end even better than before. And I've picked up a few tricks. What the most important one of which is the moment you get the layoff notice, don't sign, don't agree to anything, step away from the computer and go for a walk, or even better, a bike ride or anything. What you need is a change of scenery immediately. Just get away from things and let your brain process it, work through it, and go feel everything, and let your mind go through that, because that's a catalyst that starts yourself towards working on ways out. How do I fit? Yeah, that's when your brain starts going, okay, how do I fix this? So that's my number one advice for the very beginning is, you know what? Get away, go for a walk, pay attention to the scenery around you, because you are going to spend the next little while looking at things in a very different way. Get used to it.
I love that advice. When I was young, I got laid off from a position, and I remember I was so glad to have a day off because I was so burned out. As soon as I got home from the layoff, I was like, this is great. I can watch daytime television. And I went and visited some friends, and that ended up turning into such a good opportunity for me, because the people I visited for comfort offered me my next much better position. So it was like the day I got laid off was actually turned into a very good day.
And that's the other thing, is one of the questions you should ask yourself is, what if this is actually the best thing that's happened so far? What if this is actually the start of something new and better?
Wow, that's a good, that for me, that particular day, it definitely was. So if I could go back in time, I'm so glad I got laid off.
Yeah.
Acceptance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It was scary for a minute, but then as soon as I realized that all the freedom I had, it felt so good to sit down and watch daytime TV and
There you go. And you get to do a few more things that you otherwise wouldn't have had the time to do anyway. So there are some upsides.
So one of the things obviously you can do is you can upskill.
Yes.
It's a perfect time because now you can basically be meeting other technologies that you've been falling behind on. Both Apple and Google are always introducing new technologies, just to name two companies.
And we are in the middle of a very AI crazed era. In fact, some people are calling it the AI bubble. But I know for a fact that if you are a startup and you were doing a dog and pony show in front of investors or venture capitalists, you had better use the letters AI or ML somewhere, or LLM somewhere in your pitch. Otherwise, they're not going to pay attention. So an interesting area to upskill, of course, is AI, and it has it's rather unique compared to a lot of other burgeoning tech movements we've had in the past, in that if you really want to get good at it, you have to do some math. And
wow.
And that's different from everything else. You didn't need to do when when the web came out, you didn't need to know much math. When NoSQL came out, you didn't need a math background. When mobile came out, you didn't need a math background. AR, a little, but AI, that all of a sudden you need if you really want to do something beyond calling AI APIs, all of a sudden linear algebra comes in. What I call a differential kit. Oh, please.
I do have to jump in with one. Crypto,
yes.
That
Actually,
was a huge bubble for a while up until AI said, no.
no. Luckily, they all run on the same graphics card, so the graphics card people are probably just breathing a sigh of relief and sitting pretty. But yes, you are right. There's some modulo math in crypto. I still think it's fairly gettable. I know people who run away the moment I say differential calculus for the back propagation part. It's still the easy calculus, but it's enough to scare away a lot of people.
I love differential calculus. It was fun.
Oh yeah, that was the fun calculus. Integral calculus is
integral calculus was
a nightmare. I hope to never do it again, but yeah, so that's it's a hot topic right now, and and a lot of people are staying away from the deeper waters because of the math involved. And if you have the math skill, or at least are willing to face the terrors of math, there are opportunities out there.
Nowadays, maybe ChatGPT can explain to me the math that I don't remember, because the first time around I did okay, but I'll need a refresher, that's for sure.
I actually like ChatGPT. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, luckily there's some good math books out there, but yeah, ChatGPT, especially the new one, the new one, the new flirty ChatGPT, does a pretty good job of explaining it.
I like using ChatGPT to explain concepts to me. I don't want ChatGPT to solve problems for me, because that's my job.
Yes.
I want it to explain concepts. So, if I'm trying to remember the difference between two design patterns, I can say, can explain them and contrast them?
Yes. And
that's really fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, it's great for that. And at the very least, it is very good at producing the rough first draft that you can edit and make better. And in fact, I find it a lot easier to sometimes facing a blank document or the blank sheet of paper is a difficult thing. But if you can get ChatGPT to produce even a bad first draft, you can go, okay, I can fix this. And it's a lot easier to start from that. And it's and yeah, it's definitely part of my ChatGPT is definitely part of my layoff toolkit.
We've been talking about dealing with the emotional attack of things suddenly going away. And we talked about the identity, and you were at Microsoft about the same time I was. I don't know if you got the card that frightened. I got a card from Microsoft that said, "Welcome to your corporate citizenship," which were two words I never wanted to see together in my life.
I was with Microsoft Canada, did not get that, but we sat in a small theater with an incredibly large screen, and the first video they showed us was this really tight close-up of Steve Ballmer's face welcoming us to Microsoft, and it looked like his eyes were trying to devour my soul, but
oh no.
I haven't seen anything that scary since this IMAX concert film of the Rolling Stones, and they had a giant. I saw Keith Richards' face 6 stories tall, and that is a frightening thing.
Let's roll back to the mental health side of getting laid off. You do have your, for the most part, most likely, you do have your benefits for a month, if not longer.
Yes. So so it's temporary, but it's there.
So you do have typically counseling there.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of the other things that you might have access to help soften the blow?
Okay. Well, one of the most important things actually is to reach out to your friends. And that does necessitate that you do have friends. And that's a little trickier these days.
Yes, it is.
I see an article maybe once a week where people are lamenting that, they don't uh, they don't have as they either don't have as many close friends as they used to, or they don't have close friends. And this is one of those times when having a circle of friends and even acquaintances is important. One of the things that you should never feel, especially during tough times like this, is isolated and alone. Now, I'm fortunate that I do have a bunch of friends, and I live in one of those neighborhoods where neighbors know each other, and people at the local cafe know me by name. And we have a neighborhood happy hour here every Tuesday, the Tuesday afternoon tipplers, where we all get a bunch of my neighbors, we all gather together at the local brew pub and just hang out and chat.
And this is
So,
in Florida.
and this is in Florida. This is in Tampa. So I live in a nice old residential neighborhood. No HOA. It's just neighbors who know each other. Yeah, we actually have a very tight-knit neighborhood, to the point that we have um during the holiday season, we have a neighborhood progressive dinner where we have 4 houses, and a whole bunch of us, like about 100 of us, go from house to house having a different course. There's a appetizer course, and then there's a soups and salad house. Then we go to the main course house, and then we go to the dessert house. And this happens every holiday. And this is a great way to meet everybody all over again. And we do that sort of thing. But and the other thing is, I participate in the Tampa tech scene, and I run a meetup as well. And because of all that, I did not feel isolated, and I had people to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing we did from the company I worked at, somebody set up a Slack channel for everybody who got laid off, and we all had a back and forth on this. Actually, there's a whole Slack with a bunch of different channels, including a channel for ranting.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And also a channel for job opportunities. If you heard about a job opportunity or were looking for one, you could post it there. But that's also good. That helped. The company I worked at was a large distributed company. We had people from all over the world, so it was nice to know and be in touch with other people who were in the same boat, so we could all help each other out.
I remember my first professional layoff. The company had actually managed to not make any money, and they were at the Christmas party. We found out that they were solvent through the end of January.
Oh.
So they flew out the board of directors first class to figure out if they were going to lay off 40, 50, or 60%. And at the end of the day, they had laid off 80.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I can mention the name of the company because it's gone.
Okay.
But it was called Terra Global, and we created a mailing list called Terra Goners.
There we go. Yeah. Exactly. And in fact, actually, we had our own term for people who had been laid off from the company, and and you use something like gone or X, or something that implies that you are no longer there. But there's a lot. And what you do have to embrace the gallows humor.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So now let's talk about job hunting. How should someone approach finding their next job after a layoff?
All right. Well, I mean, the first thing is just make sure that you are mentally ready to start that job search. I would say yes, definitely take some time. Take some time for yourself in the beginning. But once you feel that you are mentally ready, or perhaps if your financial situation really requires you to start hunting down that job, the next thing is I like to call it, you have to expand your luck surface area. And basically the idea is that you want to create a surface area so large that sooner or later it will catch that job, because you've got this giant surface that is just exposed to everything, and you're just pointing it. You're pointing it at opportunities, and sooner or later, like flypaper, it's going to catch. It's going to catch something. But what that requires is you have to. You can't just simply apply for jobs. Applying for jobs, yes, is one way to, is definitely part of the plan. Part of the problem is that there are a lot of people. There's a record number of people in tech in the exact same boat. You are now one of hundreds of thousands of people in the same situation, and you need to take some proactive steps to actually stand out. And one of the simplest ways to do that is start being noisier on LinkedIn. I would have to say that's probably your best venue, and it would not hurt to update your LinkedIn profile. I have talked to a bunch of recruiters, and it's very strange, the difference between your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Your resume might get 10 seconds worth of attention, and this could be for a bunch of reasons, but it might also be because we have been conditioned now to keep scrolling and staring at the device. Recruiters linger much longer on your LinkedIn profile. It might be because we've been trained like Pavlov's dogs to keep scrolling for more, but I have seen interviews with recruiters where they have gone, yes, I might spend seconds on your resume, but I will spend minutes on your LinkedIn profile. So I would say, yes, your resume is still important, but really the thing that recruiters are really hovering over is your LinkedIn profile. And another way to boost your profile is to just start getting chatty on LinkedIn. If you have original content for LinkedIn, by all means, write it. But even if you only are saying, hey, I think this is an interesting article, here's a link to it, this is why I think it's interesting, and do that on a regular basis, it will get you found. There is, most of us use either the free version of LinkedIn or LinkedIn Premium Personal, which is for individuals, but there's a $10,000 a year version of LinkedIn that is used by recruiters, and it has a search engine, and it also indexes you by your activity on LinkedIn. And the more active you are on LinkedIn, the higher up you will rank on that search engine. That $10,000 version of LinkedIn is basically a search engine for job candidates. And what you want to do is practice SEO for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing advice. Wow.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I'm also surprised because I've always had LinkedIn as sort of this thing in my back pocket that I don't typically look at. I've compared it to other less favorable websites in as much as I only look there every couple of months, but that's also because I'm currently in the job force.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that one of the things that I do when I fall out of the job force is to immediately pay for the $40 a month premium, because that apparently moves you slightly up on the job search.
Yes, it does. It's one of the factors, and it also gives you a better view into who's looking at your profile as well. So that also helps. And in fact, looking at who's looking at your profile and the sort of jobs they're looking for or the sort of jobs they have is kind of a way that it provides signals that you can use for your own personal search engine optimization.
Excellent.
Now, rolling back to something prior to the LinkedIn, I noticed that you've mentioned something called a self-inventory. So what is the advantage of doing a self-inventory after a layoff?
I think one of the most important things is that it will remind you, every now and again, you do need a reminder of what you can do or what you've been able to do before. Sometimes, especially with a lot of jobs, you end up niching down and concentrating on a very small a very small particular area where they want somebody to specialize in. And then after that job, now that you're no longer in that job, you may need to remind yourself, oh yeah, I used to do this. I could probably get caught up on that. This may be something, this may be these areas, these things I've done before, might be areas that I want to look into again. All too often, there is such a strong temptation to try and find the exact same a job that's really similar to the one you had, or trying to do the exact same work. Now, sometimes, especially if you are in a very specialized area, maybe that is the way to go, but it's definitely not your only option. And one of the nice things about taking that inventory is it will remind you of the things you're good at, and it may also remind you of things that you had meant to try out, or feel that you meant to try to get into, an area you'd meant to study, and perhaps that's worth looking at now.
Great. So it's an inventory more of your strengths. I'm used to being exposed to inventories that are looking for where are the areas that I should improve. But it sounds to me like you're proposing, what are my strengths? What have I accomplished in the past? And it seems to me that that would even help soar self-esteem after a layoff.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing. You will, most of the time, I believe you will pleasantly surprise yourself. And the other thing is that generally, I know that I believe there's that book, First Go Find Your Strengths. It turns out that you get more return if you focus on your strengths rather than trying to shore up a weakness. Unless that particular weakness is one that's been holding you back. Generally, it's better by far to focus on your strengths.
That's amazing. I've heard that what you focus on, you get more of. So I'm kind of avoidant of what am I doing wrong inventories at this point in my life. So I love that proposal. I think that would be a wonderful activity to fill a journal after a layoff.
Oh, yes.
So let's talk about some of the other forms of networking other than friends. There are, as you host a meetup.
And actually, I started a meetup because I got laid off once.
Wonderful.
All right.
Wow.
And that was the idea. And it was the simplest meetup idea. Anybody, please feel free to steal this for your own city or town. I just created a meetup called Coders, Creatives, and Craft Beer. And the philosophy is no presentations, all conversations. It was just a meetup to have an excuse for us to meet somewhere and enjoy some fine alcoholic or non-alcoholic, if you prefer, beverages, and chat and go meet your fellow techies in the community. And the idea behind that was to, in the end, it was all about increasing my luck surface area, but it's also one of those meetups that I wish existed. And since I had that free time, I just decided, hey, what if I brought into being things I wish existed? I've got the time. This is a simple one. This one does not require any talent. All it requires is an announcement on Meetup.com. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, and sometimes, and actually, another job search tactic that I started actually just got out of control, and I have to maintain it now. It is a list. It's simply a weekly list of all the tech, entrepreneur, and nerd events happening in Tampa Bay. And it was actually, like I said, it was a job search tactic that went out of control. My plan was to wind it down as soon as I landed the job. The problem was the moment I did, I got all these emails going, where's the list? And I decided, okay, I guess I'm doing it permanently now. I was doing it manually in the beginning, cutting and pasting from Meetup into HTML tables. And I just decided I'd better write a Python script and automate this. So I did.
That's so much fun.
Yeah, and I did, and along the way, I learned Selenium automation and how to counter Meetups anti-scraping technologies. So yeah, I learned a lot.
That's fantastic. I'm run a meetup here in Colorado, so you're giving me all sorts of ideas.
And yeah, and that's the thing. Unfortunately, ordinary effort produces ordinary results. Unusual effort produces unusual results. And I would say that you have to be in this day and era, you have to be a little bit unusual, but it may not be that hard. Find the thing that you wish existed and bring it into existence. And this and sometimes it's pretty simple. A list of upcoming events isn't really that hard. It's not like having to write a whole app. But one of the nice things about it is that people do find it useful. It is helpful, and it's one of those things I wish existed.
Oh heavens!
I love that.
When I was very young, I was a fan of Star Trek Next Generation, and this was back during the Usenet times.
Oh, hey, yeah.
And I had heard that Deep Space Nine was coming out, and I started collecting all of the different, because it was in syndication, I started collecting all of the channels and the times for the debut.
All right.
And posting it to Alt Fan Star Trek or something to that effect. And I got people contributing from all over the country, their channel, and it was just like, if I didn't get that post out once a week, people were like, "You doing okay?"
Yeah, exactly. People want to find out stuff like that. So if you can, if you can collect that information and put it in a place where people can find it, you'd be surprised how many people will come to you. And all this contributes to expanding that ever important luck surface area.
Right.
After a while of doing that, people will start coming to you for things. So I'm at the point right now where I am on I'm sure actually it is still a physical Rolodex. I am on the Rolodex of a local TV news producer here, and I get brought into the studio every now and again to answer questions on either mobile tech or AI, and I'm doing one next. In fact, I just got contacted today. They want me to do something next week about the pros and cons of going to AI for cost-saving recipes. And I guess it was inspired by, I don't know if you've seen, I think it was Google's Gemini AI that suggested adding gasoline to spaghetti sauce to make spicy spaghetti.
Goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no.
So yeah, some of the AI still get things wrong. But the thing is, once you get known for doing something, eventually people will come to you for it. And a lot of it just comes from bringing things wish people existed into existence.
So I'm going to turn things around now. We
Sure.
are people who have been laid off. We have gone that route. We know that the tech industry is not about to dry up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we've talked about would apply very well to the younger professionals, the recent graduates, to say, how can you make yourself more visible? But
okay.
Do you have any comments on people breaking into the industry and how to handle the turbulent job market?
Okay, well, let's see. For one, for people for those of you who are just about who are graduating from, I don't know, from whether it's high school or some form of post-secondary education or possibly a boot camp, first of all, let me say I'm very sorry that it's happening right now. You've just come out because you probably spent some of your school time at home, largely on Zoom. And I guess one of the first things I would say is while there's a lot of resistance to the return to the office, if this is going to be your first or second job ever, I would actually strongly recommend taking at least a hybrid job, if not a full-time office job. And there's a reason for this. And that reason actually is that is where you're going to learn a lot of how to be a human being in the modern world. It means interacting with people. It means learning how to communicate with more than just text and video, but actually eye contact and human kinesics and just being in the room. There is a reason why when a lot of jokes flop, somebody said the comedian says, "Well, you know what? You had to be there." You do have to be there. You will learn. You will learn so much. I was just listening to a podcast earlier where somebody was lamenting that a lot of young people don't know how to flirt anymore, and you can only do that by practice. And learning how to talk and relate to people, and that's something you really want to do. And the other thing about I think you also learn a lot about personal responsibility and digging in by having to go to some place. And I mean, even now, and I've worked for a couple of decades at this point, I would, you know what, if the commute isn't soul killing, I would show up at a hybrid workplace. Now, keep in mind, I'm an extrovert. I like that sort of thing. But at least if this is your first job out of school, I would say, if possible, try and find don't be scared away by a job, at least, that requires you to show up at an office. You will learn a lot of skills that they don't teach anywhere else, and that you can only learn from actually being in the thick of it. That's one of the first things I would recommend off the top that I haven't seen in a lot of advice to new graduates and that sort of thing. The other thing I would say is this is the time to take a chance. For most of you, you do not have the responsibilities of a family and children just yet. Some do, but most of you probably don't. And this is the time where you can afford to get things wrong. This is where mistakes are small. This is you're not in a situation where you're going, oh, I have to pay for so and so's appendectomy or so and so's orthodontics or a brand new hot water pump. There's
plenty of time to mess up big.
Yes, you can do that later.
So and so's college, like my daughter.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is the time where you can experiment. You can experiment and be daring, and also find out who you are. There is a certain point where it is actually sad. There's a certain age where you should have figured out who you are, and you should not be staring at the mirror in the morning going, "Oh God, who am I?" This is where you discover yourself, and you do that by also getting out there. I would say, if there's a tech community in your neighborhood, if there are meetups happening in your city, go and participate, and go and join things. At the very least, even if it isn't a career booster, it turns out that if you belong to something, if you belong to a group, you actually will be not only mentally healthier, but actually physically healthier. The guy who wrote the book, Bowling Alone, there's a film about him that came out last year called Join or Die. And it is all about belonging to a community and how incredibly important it is, and how lately, at least over the past couple of decades, we seem to have forgotten about that. And I think it's time. Especially you as the new young people, to reinvigorate that communitarian spirit. It's not just good for you; it's good for where you live, and it's just good for society in general.
I love this advice, because as a mother, I feel that Generation Z got a big time ripoff, because a lot of them had their first 2 years of college, or like my daughter, her high school graduation, they
Mhm.
moved school online. And what a ripoff. They didn't get to have their prom or their graduation, or for the students I had at that time in their early 20s, they didn't get to have their college experience. So I love to see as the world comes back to life. I think that age group in particular could benefit from boosting these experiences because they were robbed of some of those experiences.
Yeah, and you know what? There might actually be some opportunities in, like I keep saying, bring into existence that we wished exist. I mean, maybe it's time for the three of us to form, a prom company where we go, did you miss your prom? Don't worry, we will. Let's bring it back. There was at least a genre of high school movies where people who had horrible high school experiences went back to relive it again. I think there was a Drew Barrymore one where she went
Yep.
undercover. There
Never
was
been kissed.
Never Been Kissed. Yeah. Maybe
It's
there's a business in there or some kind of community effort in there. Let's have a fake prom. Let's have a non-prom or a post-prom. Let's
I
bring
think
those
they
things
need
back.
a concert like Woodstock. I think they should have a generational because a concert or something. But I skipped my prom, but I still got the experience of skipping it and running
Okay.
around with the other people who were skipping it.
But you did your own thing, right?
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
still got to have that experience, and it was a communal experience.
Well, there you go. And that's the important thing, actually. Is that coming together?
I want to
agree.
step. Go ahead.
Oh, that's all I was gonna say is I agree, and I love all this talk about community.
I want to step back to what you said about working in the office.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've been I've been a remote developer now for 10 years. I actually was remote before the plague.
Me as well.
But I also have certain family issues that I have to deal with that require me to work from home. But I really do love the idea of what you said of learning to interact with people when you're out of college on a business level. And one of the other nice things is, regardless of small or large company, by being in the office, you get to meet people that you probably wouldn't meet just in your remote world, because you'll probably run into design folks or
Yes.
QA folks that otherwise would just sort of be nameless people in your agile steps.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, but also people in the neighboring offices who work in a completely different industry. And actually, one of my favorite jobs, I got to be really good friends with the guy who ran the convenience store in the office building. And yeah, we chat, and we even stepped out for coffee a couple of times, and I got to see a different world. So he told me incredibly wild stories about living in Vanuatu, so tiny island in the South Pacific, and he needed halal meat, and they said, well, we can't do halal meat, but we'll let you butcher the cow. And he had to learn how to butcher a cow. And he talked about that experience. And, I know things now about butchering a cow that I did not before.
that there feels like there's just an ounce of and wish I didn't know.
But I got a window into a different life that I never otherwise would have. So yes, there is, like I said, while there are and I do enjoy my remote work as well, but I also try to make sure that I get out there and go beyond the confines of the house.
That is fantastic. Now, you said go beyond the confines of the house, and this is my my hip pocket question that I always ask everybody. Let's say that work is going well, and you're coding or you're doing whatever. What do you do when you're not worried about work and you're not coding and you're not attached to a keyboard, at least a computer keyboard, as I see a couple behind you?
Oh yeah.
What do you do for fun?
Okay. Well, let's see. quite regularly. I do hang out with the Tuesday afternoon tipplers and chat with my neighbors, and I also am a regular at a couple of close by coffee shops. So I live in, at least from a bicycle sense, one of those 15-minute neighborhoods where things are reachable most things are reachable by bike within 15 minutes, and I do my groceries on the bike, and it's a good way. It's also a great way to keep in shape and listen to podcasts. So I listen to podcasts on the bike. I've just got my I basically just have one of those OtterBox clip-on things on my backpack because I don't want to wear headphones while biking, and I'm just listening to my iPhone that way. Let's see. The other thing I do, of course, is, as some of you know, that I am an accordion player, and well, I'm a keyboard player. I just like the accordion because it's portable, doesn't need power, it's loud, and at a bar, it's a machine that turns music into free beer. And I play with a Jimmy Buffett-ish band here in Tampa Bay called the Tropical Suns, classic rock, and I do the keyboard parts on my accordion, and I like doing I like doing that as well. Of course, I do have the regular geeky habits, including I'm part of a role-playing game group where we have been playing the Star Wars role-playing game for about 10 years now. It's been a long campaign, and been playing the new Marvel superheroes game, also a good one. A lot of socializing and schmoozing and going out. There's
That's nice.
I do a fair bit of that. I do a fair bit of that. And then daily biking, I try and do about 10 kilometers every day, see the neighborhood, say hi to people, that sort of thing. But yeah, my hobbies tend to be social.
Which is
this all
really
sounds like so
fantastic.
much fun.
Which is why I'm in the developer advocate line of work anyways. I like talking to people as much as I like talking to computers.
That is fantastic. On a more serious note, one of the questions that we've been asking our guests this season is that this is a time of strife in the world. There's a lot of conflict going on. What do you do to maintain your zen, or how do you not let everything that's going on affect you?
A part of it is being selective, being selective with the news and your news sources and how much you watch. All right. It is a lot of the time. I mean, what's the old journalist say? Oh, the old journalist slogan: "If it bleeds, it leads." Right. I mean, generally you want to talk about you want to talk about the horrible state of the world, but that's just the human condition. I mean, isn't there that isn't there something from I don't know, the Phoenician Times or something like that, something from the Bronze Age, where somebody wrote, it's terrible, the youth no longer respect their elders, we're on the brink of a world-ending war. I mean, it's always been that way. I suppose the other thing, and I've only done this once, just to shock myself into realizing, maybe it's not so bad as it seems, is do you remember the movie The Day After?
Yes.
It's on YouTube.
And
it will shock a lot of perspective into you. And if that's not depressing enough, the BBC also did a nuclear war movie called Threads, and it's 3 times as grim as The Day After. And
I just fall back on we didn't start the fire, and that sort of puts it all in perspective.
and there we go. And the other thing, I suppose, is I mean, and this would actually apply to the personal inventory thing we talked about earlier, is basically take inventory. Take the time to take inventory of what's going well in your life. There should be something. If you are watching or listening to this podcast from Are we G9, G8, or G7? I can't remember who we keep kicking out and letting back in. I believe it's G8 at this point. I don't think the Russians are in at the. I don't think Russia's in at the moment. But if you are listening to this from a G8 country, you probably have at least a few blessings that you can count on.
That's a very good sentiment.
Yeah. Now, I will admit I tend towards optimism, so I might not be the best person to ask about this sort of thing. But
but we've been asking everybody.
But that's my take.
That's great. I really like that.
Actually, Kodeco itself, and Kodeco actually was really helpful for layoff number 3. After layoff number 3, that was for an RFID chip company that just ended up being bought up by a competitor, but they let everybody go. I decided that I should try. I would upskill and learn Android, and my plan to learn Android development was by auditioning to write for what was then RayWenderlich.com's brand new Android team. And I simply decided, you know what better way to learn than by auditioning to write an article? And I did that. And it was, and I wrote most of that article and the code for it. I think it's still in there. I don't know if it will run on present day Android. It was an application that used the face detection features in Android, so that when you pointed the selfie camera at yourself, it would draw googly eyes over your own eyes and a little mustache under your nose. Yeah,
I remember that one too.
Okay, so that was my audition piece. And one of the nice things about it was, one, I gained new skills because I had not written an Android program before and had stayed away from Java for many years prior to that, because that's pre-Kotlin. The other thing was, it gave me something to point to when I was interviewing. I was going, oh yes, I have an article at RayWenderlich.com, and here it is, and here's the app, in action. And it also led me to meet the other people there, which eventually led to all sorts of things, including speaking at the last RW DevCon and my ongoing relationship with what's now Kodeco.
And of course, Kodeco is always looking for articles and authors and the like. So
yes, that's right.
If you're currently looking,
yeah, absolutely right, absolutely, and it's a fantastic opportunity, and you'll meet a community of great people as well. That's I am very pleased that I'm still part of the Kodeco team, and I get to do things like this. And once again, this is, when this podcast comes out, it is something else I can point to in my in my job search. Basically it's a virtuous cycle. I'm very pleased about that.
I'm really glad.
I love how Google uses the saying, I think they use it, lift while you climb, because one thing when I found myself kind of without something to do is go look for others to help, and through boosting others. And one of the things I do is to do that is volunteer for GDG. And that's how I found Kodeco. And so through the act of volunteering for conferences, I got recruited. So if you can't find anything to do, find someone to teach.
Exactly. There's a podcaster, Jordan Harbinger, and he always ends his podcast with that saying, "We rise by lifting others."
I love that.
Nice. Very nice. Joey, I just really enjoy talking with you. I got to meet you at a DevCon many years ago.
2018.
Oh God, how quickly that flies. 6 years. Jeez.
Yep. Richmond, Virginia. Yeah, I remember that. That was fun. In fact, I did 2 presentations at that one. I did the 4-hour workshop and a 2-hour one. That was my first.
Played with
James Dempsey.
With James Dempsey and the
breakpoints.
And the breakpoints.
Yeah, that's right. I still remember. Yeah, in fact, I still remember how to play the chords for the optional song.
It's one of my favorite. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. I'm so glad we had you on the show. I really want to thank you for your time, and I'm really hoping this helps as one thing you can point to. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next episode.